You voted, and here's the results of last week's episode. What's up, guys? That's Rick.
And that is Ian, and welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series.
Remember, just sit back, get cozy, enjoy the fire, maybe grab a snack, and lend us your ears.
Now, these stories contain some truth, but there's no guarantee. The only guarantee is the sense of uncertainty and the feeling of fear slowly creeping in.
It's ironic, really. As this fire warms us, the next few stories chill us to the bone.
And as a warning, we suggest that you watch these next stories with a duo, trio, or 4 or more. But if you don't want to heed these warnings, so be it.
With the help of some of our online friends, we present to you the first of the 3 stories.
One night, a woman went out for drinks with her girlfriends. She left the bar fairly late at night, got in her car, and onto the deserted highway. After a few minutes, she noticed a lone pair of headlights in her rearview mirror, approaching at a pace just slightly quicker than hers. As the car pulled up behind her, she glanced and saw the turn signal on. The car was going to pass, when suddenly it swerved back behind her, pulled up dangerously close to her tailgate, and the brights flashed. Now she was getting nervous. The lights dimmed for a moment, and then the brights came back on, and the car behind her surged forward. The frightened woman struggled to keep her eyes on the road and fought the urge to look at the car behind her. Finally, her exit approached, but the car continued to follow, flashing the brights periodically. Through every stoplight and turn, it followed her until she pulled into her driveway. She figured her only hope was to make a mad dash into the house and call the police. As she flew from the car, so did the driver of the car behind her, and he screamed, "Lock the door and call the police! Call 911!" When the police arrived, the horrible truth was finally revealed to the woman. The man in the car had been trying to save her. As he pulled up behind her and his headlights illuminated her car, he saw the silhouette of a man with a butcher knife rising up from the back seat to stab her. So he flashed his brights and the figure crouched back down.
Wow, I never checked the backseat of my car.
That doesn't seem like they'll have much trouble remembering to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's for sure. Maybe this next story will put my mind at ease.
Doubtful, but hey, let's find out.
I've always been uneasy about driving alone at night. It was worse the first few times, when I had just gotten my license. But the nagging fear has never gone away to this day. It's distorting to look into the mirrors and see nothing, and I mean nothing, but the consuming blackness of the night. It makes me hesitant to check the mirrors. Should I see this dark void, or worse, something sitting in my backseat staring at me? In the summer of 2013, I found myself driving home alone on Highway 902 from a party. It was almost midnight, and needless to say, it was pitch black. As was usual at night, I was on edge. I had the radio off, and I could hear nothing but the muffled roar of the tires on the pavement and the dull hum of the engine. I stole a glance into the middle rearview mirror, and I saw nothing but darkness through the back window. I know that I looked backward and saw nothing. I'm sure of it. Just the seemingly endless blackness of the night. I remember it so clearly because not 10 seconds later, a car passed me to the left. Headlights on. I had one of those sudden adrenaline rushes, like when you think you see a person outside of your bedroom window when it's just a tree, or when you start awake at night with the feeling of falling. 10 seconds earlier, nothing had been behind me. Suddenly, a car. I drove all the way home shivering and knowing something was off. The next morning I found 2 sets of scratches near the back of my van. One was on the left rear, one was on the right. The car was pretty old. They could have been there for months, but that was the first time that I distinctly remember seeing them. In hindsight, there are 2 possibilities for what happened that night. Possibility 1, by some glitch in reality or something paranormal, this other car had somehow appeared behind me within 10 seconds of me checking my mirror. Like some sort of weird ghost crap or something. However, the second option is what makes my blood run cold. Possibility 2. The car was normal. It had approached me from the rear and passed me to my left. However, something large and wide and as black as the night had been clinging to the rear of my car, obstructing my view through the window and leaving deep scratches on the sides.
How was that?
That was extremely creepy. I am legitimately freaked out.
Yeah, me too. Let's get out of here. Let's wrap this up. I feel like someone's watching us.
Yeah, sure thing. On to our final story.
About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the U.S. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. But all that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were wide open and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped dead in my tracks. He'd stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time staring at him. and then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What the fuck? But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off of the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see.
Alright, well, I guess that's enough for tonight. What do you think, Ian? Ian?
Sorry, I was screaming inside.
Yeah, that's about as much as we can take for tonight. We're going to sign off, but you guys still have some work to do.
Yeah, go ahead and comment. Let us know which of these stories sent chills down your spine and pee down your leg.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and continue to watch, oh faithful watchers. Now, we have got to quit filming outside.
Yeah.
Like this cannot keep happening.